Internet Governance Conference in India. I have been somewhat involved in the Internet governance forums over the course of last several years, but I am extremely pleased to have this opportunity given to be part of this important panel on the IPv6 and critical Internet resources. So over the course of the next 15 minutes, I am going to share what are the IPv6 the adoption happening in the world, and I do have some data prepared, which you might be. I hope you will find it interesting. So, in the interest of time, let me get started. So once again, I am actually going to address three key aspects of the things concerned with IPv6. First of all, the current state. And then second of all, what IPv6 will actually going to further advance Internet, because it's not just about address or that what the people are just looking at, but IPv6 actually comes with a huge potential upside, what it will actually going to create impact to the industry and also to the human society. So, first of all, most of you, I believe that somewhat have been following what is actually next step for the Internet. IPv6, as you can see it, the name, it's Internet Protocol version 6. Right. So after the Internet Protocol version 4, the industry experts got together and then start working on that. What are the next technology required to continuously enable and then support the growth of Internet. So that's how Internet IP version 6 got actually the work started. And it has been about 10 years. In fact, that Cisco routers, some of you might be the user of Cisco routers, has actually turned on the IPv6 features back in 2001. So in terms of IPv6 readiness from the technology in routing and the switching environment, this technology has been around and quite some time by now. But a lot of people actually took the approach, wait and see whether or not actually the service providers are turning on IPv6 service, or there is any application or services which will only be available on the IPv6 and so on. As you can see, many people are just actually looking at whether or not other part of the Internet ecosystems are making progress towards IPv6 or not. But there was actually a significant the tipping point we actually have experienced in the year of 2011 and also this year in 2012. What has actually happened is that global IPv4 address really got run out. So that there is no IPv4 address available since the March last year. So at last, the 5 blocks of IPv4 address were equally distributed around the world, and Asia Pacific has actually received some of the stuff. But even that, Asia Pacific, there is a address registration management party called APNIC. Has actually experienced exhaustion of IPv4 last April. So here in Asia Pacific, including India, we don't have the global IPv4 address no longer available for any user or any service provider, including a government. So that we do actually face a critical need to start working on the new way of building Internet, so-called IPv6. So industry actually has really took it seriously, and then back in June last year, there was actually the industry-wide effort to test whether or not the Internet is ready for IPv6 as a next generation Internet. So we have had the day called IPv6 Day. So that was a day that the content provider has actually turned on IPv6. It was first the coordinated effort in the internet industry that people actually tried whether or not the internet is going to break or not, because no one actually wasn't sure whether or not providers and the device and the contents are all ready for the IP global and the massive scale deployment to IPv6. So that was the one moment on June 6th last year that the industry actually tested. And the outcome of the IPv6 day was so positive that we didn't actually experience any significant issue. So thanks to all the effort in the industry and the government and the users, that we have actually verified that internet is ready to move on to next the generation, so-called IPv6. So what has happened since then? I was actually here in Delhi a few months ago when the next step of the evolution of the internet actually took place, called IPv6 global launch. So unlike last year, we have had only one day that the industry tried and tested whether or not the internet is ready for the IPv6. So June this year, the industry has actually decided and declared this is a date that the internet is actually evolved to the new decade. So that we are actually very pleased that now all the ecosystems in the industry are now formally moved into the next phase of internet evolution, so-called IPv6. And there are a couple of other data points I also have on the slide, such as following APNIC in Asia Pacific, Europe also has run out of the IPv4 address. So not only Asia Pacific problem, this part of the region has been actually experiencing the fastest growth of the internet adoption, but even some mature country like Europe has now gone out of the IPv4 address. So this the phenomena that the whole internet has to move on to the new decade or new generation is becoming a common trend, and that is what is happening. So let me actually move on. In terms of in terms of how the world is moving towards a new generation of the internet based on IPv6, there are four key aspects the industry is interested in how to measure whether or not adoption of internet is happening. First of all, starting from left-hand side, the people and the service provider have to have a V6 address, right? Unless you have an IPv6 global address, you cannot actually make the network ready for that. So how much IPv6 addresses now allocated actually assigned to the service provider. This is one data point. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that in the world there are registrars called the RIR, and India has now the national registrar. And whoever wanted to have a global IPv6 address will submit a request that we wanted to have an IPv6, and then we will get the requested IP address allocated accordingly. So the next step is whether or not assigned the allocated V6 address is going to be used in the production environment. Sometimes people just have an IP address, but not actually applying in the production environment. So we do actually care whether or not IPv6 address is being advertised in the global internet environment. That's the second point of the data we are looking at in terms of how the adoption is happening. And thirdly, as you know, that the use of internet is all depending on content and services and applications. So there's another data point is how the content is ready for the IPv6 reachability. So that's the third point. And fourthly, the actual users, how the devices and the users are now actually accessing the internet via IPv6. So those are the four things we will determine how much traffic is actually generated. So that's what we are looking at. So from Cisco, by looking at those four key aspects of adoption parameters, we have actually took the initiative this summer and then made one place to go in terms of how to measure and track the IPv6 adoption happening in the globe. This is the open data, so you could actually go to this site and then click your country, India. You can actually have the data of those four key metrics I just briefly mentioned about. So we are very pleased to launch this IPv6 market adoption adoption site. And this is not only just the Cisco's effort. We work with the ISOC and also IPv6 forum in order to get some required data, and also industry peers like Google's and so on. So let me actually share how the internet adoption, IPv6 adoption stands against each of the four areas by looking at the different countries. So first on the network, the network has to be turned on the IPv6. So I have actually located data for the India as well. As you can see, in terms of the IPv6 readiness from the network standpoint, we're pretty much ready. In fact, the global top 20 ISPs, tier 1 ISPs, are all ready for the IPv6 since I would say the mid 2000. So that networks very much has been ready in terms of carrying IPv6 traffic, and then as you can see that the data on India, I was actually very pleased to see how India is also making progress in terms of getting ready for the IPv6 from the network provider's point of view. My read on the data from India is that while transit AS mean that some of the IPv6 routing traffic is transit passing through India, whether or not India's telecom operators are ready to pass the IPv6 data coming from outside and then going to the outside again. We do have a 68%, while the new AS, meaning that the new operators' networks are showing a higher adoption rate, meaning that any new build-out seems to be pretty much equipped with IPv6 capability, which is very good compared to the other countries like Japan, the US, where we are actually facing the coexistence challenge between the IPv4 and the V6-based internet infrastructure. So that's the first point. The network seems to be pretty good shape, and let's look at the content. So once again, there are a lot of the question whether or not the content provider really needs to be ready for the IPv6. There was a lot of the debates took place during the course of 2000, but thanks to once again all the efforts put by the internet community, especially the last year's IPv6 Day accelerate the effort from the content provider in order to actually make the content sites ready for the IPv6 reachability. When I say the content, basically Cisco is looking at the three aspects. One, the web, whether or not their website is reachable via IPv6. And second of all, email. So email needs to be actually passed through the IPv6 network or infrastructure. So, and then thirdly, the DNS. Those three components we are looking at how the contents or content sites are ready for the IPv6. Once again, India is also showing a pretty good number in terms of how the whole countries are getting ready for the IPv6 from the content standpoint. And the next one is the user traffic. Guo briefly mentioned that while service providers are making progress following the national policy or direction for the IPv6 adoption, the user traffic is somewhat still requires work, and it is not a unique challenge in India, I would say. I mean, while the networks and the contents are pretty much ready for the IPv6, in terms of the actual user traffic, the global average is about 1%. That is a country like Romania and France showing a little bit higher number, but one of the key, I think, driver here is a mobile. I understand that the majority of internet users in India will be based on the mobile, so that I believe this number you are seeing here, it's a 0.1% or so, will rapidly increase as the more users in India will have mobile-based internet access going forward, because mobile will actually consume more traffic, and then the mobile is the one, whether it's a smartphone or tablet, will have more applications loaded on the device. So that it is our expectation that the India number will rapidly grow up as you do see the mobile users getting on the internet going forward. So those are once again the data point. I took a snapshot a couple of weeks ago, but this is the site I introduced earlier is a globally accessible open information. So that I would encourage you to have a look at time to time. It's real-time updated, so that it will be interesting to see how the whole world is actually making progress towards IPv6. Well, not towards the IPv6, how the world is actually moving with IPv6. But once again, that since the 2011 last year, we have seen tremendous progress in terms of how the whole internet is making progress with IPv6. So then some of you would ask, what's next? And I will talk about that. The IPv6 is not only for the address, right? So, but starting with the address, and because IPv6, unlike IPv4, will provide the unlimited address. This actually creates a whole new opportunity for us to actually utilize and develop the internet. So as you can see on the screen, that the mobile, I would say, will be the key how the internet will evolve going forward, and also devices. To date, the majority of internet users are human, but they're going forward. In addition to human, we are expecting that the non-human the devices will actually going to be connected, and that's what people refer to as a machine-to-machine or Internet of Things. Let me actually talk about a few examples here. So with IPv6 comes with unlimited address space. We are actually seeing a very interesting movement in the society, meaning that the people seek for the better quality of life and a better experience, quality of experience on through the day-to-day basis or daily life. So here there's a couple of examples. For example, I come from Japan, where the country faces aging society challenge. We have a lot of aged population who spend a lot of time at the hospital and even at the home with the daycare and so on. For those kind of society, having the better quality of life is very important. So to date, in my view, personally, I feel that when the people get sick, why that the sick person needs to actually go to the hospital, and the doctor or the care shall actually deliver to the home, so that their health condition will get better as opposed to going to the. So without the internet, this kind of a little bit weird things happening. But with the internet and then with the health conditions passed through the internet, we think that the service delivery of healthcare can be actually reversed. So wherever the individual person or citizen wanted to have the care services or healthcare services, will get actually delivered at the appropriate location and with the right content. So that's one of the things. And the left-hand side example is a vending machine. That when the vending machine run out of stock, then the machine itself will communicate to the warehouse saying, I need more stock gets delivered. To date, personnel are actually visiting site to site and then to see whether or not enough sufficient stocks are stored in each machine. But the machine will get intelligent so that the users will actually get a better experience or get better services. So in Japan, we have a couple of the early phase of projects going on with regards to Internet of Things. Cisco has been working with a company called Entity Data. The part of the entity group, doing the smart mobility and the weather information systems monitoring and the service delivery. So once again, that with IPv6, the IP address can be attached to every devices, including sensors and the monitoring cameras and so on. With having a massive data captured from those the new devices now connected to the internet, the entity data is creating a new environment environmental protection services to the local government and also the society. And for as for the smart mobility, by monitoring the traffic condition real-time basis, the network itself with some intelligence coming out of the cloud or data center, whoever is traveling inside the city will get the better navigation services. Today, I mean, a lot of the traffic management system, monitoring system exists, but by having internet connected the device and also the information processing power through the internet, we believe that there is a much better the navigation services can be realized, and that's what we are actually looking at. So these are just an example of the Internet of Things, but once again, with the IPv6, the things could not actually realize possible are now changing. That we are seeing a huge potential how the internet can actually make a difference for the city and the village, for the education. Yesterday I heard that there's a huge emphasis on the importance of e-education system in India. So to the rural areas, I believe that these kinds of things can be done with IPv6 enabled infrastructure. So with that, my key takeaway to the audience is that IPv6 is now mainstream. And don't wait. I mean, I think the longer you wait, you're actually going to pay more price, because you are actually going to live with the legacy, meaning the IPv4 infrastructure. So that the transition or coexistence of V4 to V6 is very painful exercise to all the developed countries currently have. India has the advantage of not having a much V4-based infrastructure. I think India has the much better position to build a brand new and cutting-edge internet-based society. So please act now. That's one my call-out. And the next step is, as I briefly shared experience from Japan, with IPv6, the machine-to-machine and Internet of Things are opening up a new world of the Internet. And the important thing here is the partnership. One of the reasons how the internet was able to develop and so successful is the ecosystem. That no one party is the successor. So we have to work together. I'm very happy to work with whoever is interested in from India to make the new things in the internet. So please pay attention to the importance of partnership. And I believe that with the IPv6, we can actually further develop the internet in the future. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kinoshita. I'm really very thankful to you for giving this nice presentation. Basically, he has touched upon all the points which I have perceived when thus planning for this session. So basically, what we have done for the last 2 years, so he has just validated all those things. He has said, yes, India stands where. So at least now we are satisfied, yes, whatever we were saying in our presentations, now that is validated by the international body. So definitely what the things starts from this point. Basically IPv6 can bring, as I told you in my just brief introduction, the complete socio-economic changes it can bring in the country. So now Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communications are being talked about, but without IPv6 it's not possible. And of course we have a ambitious target of touching 600 million broadband connections by 2020. So definitely everybody is talking about the broadband connections, but how? Nobody was thinking of that angle. So we have started taking the steps further, and of course IPv6 now is in the notice of each and everybody. Even I would like to just share one thing with you. Our Madam Jayalalitha, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, in the assembly itself, she has declared that all my officers should be IPv6 trained. So now you can just see the things coming from the political leadership. So now people have started talking of in the political circles also. So now once we are talking of the training, so I must invite Professor Suresh Ramdas. So he is a professor and director of the National Advanced IPv6 Center of Excellence at University Science Malaysia. I am right, I think. So of course, he's the Malaysian IPv6 Forum chairman. He was the chairman of the Asia Pacific IPv6 Task Force and was involved in promoting IPv6 within the region of the globally. Professor Suresh Vanan and his team at NEF6 are the founders of the globally recognized Certified Networks Engineering IPv6 program. And of course, he has published number of research papers in more than 200 international and national level journals, and he has been very closely associated with the ITUT, EPNIC, ICANN, and all international bodies. And of course, we also under process of the MOU with the NEF6. So over to Mr. Suresh Raman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. R.M. Agrawal. Dear panelists, dear IPv6 colleagues from India, it's really good to see the IPv6 move in India, which started not very long ago, but has gained momentum very quickly. And what I'm really impressed to see and hear is that the government of India itself has taken the initiative to push. IPv6 in general cannot move without the pushing of a government. In Malaysia, it moved because of the pushing of the government. It was mandated by the government. The National Center was set up under which I was asked to lead. And the roadmap was created to support the center. The agencies were all invited in to give input. It took 3 years. The roadmap was then endorsed by the Parliament, Cabinet, and the movement took place. This started in 2007. Right? So it was a major effort, and in India I see that major effort being led by Mr. R.M. Agrawal and his team. And honestly, I've seen the move. It's moving. You know, you've seen the momentum. I've seen people gathering. Take a look at this room. Right? No seating place anymore. So this is the kind of momentum that IPv6 has gained in India. About 2 weeks ago, I was invited by the Chinese government to go there and also speak with their committees on IPv6. This was in Beijing. I really didn't understand most of what they were talking. It was all in Mandarin. I was the only non-Mandarin speaking person there. And but I could see that they too have they placed great emphasis on the need for IPv6, the rollout for IPv6. And they have their own planning as well to move. But in comparison, I see India's planning already ahead, and you're more coherent. So that's a good thing. I also saw just now earlier some traffic statistics shown. But the traffic statistics, well, Konishita-san has shown, tends to vary. About 2 years or a year and a half ago, my students did a survey and found Indonesia to have the highest IPv6 traffic for a while. So it tends to vary. India's traffic, I can say, is solid traffic, which means it's real traffic. Some of the other countries, the traffics tend to be malware. So people are already beginning to use malware for IPv6. So that's a good and bad sign. Good means, you know, IPv6 is here to stay. Bad sign is that our malware people have also learned how to use IPv6. Today my talk will be on, first thing, we've always had a misnomer here. We always mentioned IPv6 as a migration. At this conference, I'd like to actually state that this is a misnomer, and really what we should do is we should call it an IPv6 expansion. Adoption is good, expansion is probably a more accurate word. And why the difference between these two, I'll explain in a little while. And the second, I will present a few slides on IPv6 and the need within the banking industry. So IDC has worked together with us, and I'm using some of the slides that IDC recently presented to the financial institutions as well. Basically, I think most of you know IDC. They are a research firm. They look into internet. They also look into banking, and they were asked by a few government organizations around the world to give some input into the banking industry. NAV6, our history, we started in 1992. We started as the Network Research Group within the School of Computer Sciences in the University Science Malaysia. And in 2005, the government said, time for you guys to focus on IPv6, made us the national IPv6 center for the country. So we are a national center. We have an interesting birth in that sense, because we are born of the Ministry of Telecommunications, but we are parked under the Ministry of Higher Education within the university. So we are also an academic center. So we're probably the only ones in the world with such a strange affiliation. So we technically, for IPv6 activities, we do run the nation's IPv6 agenda, but also in the sense we are all academics and we run academic programs, masters and PhDs in next generation internet. As of today, we have about 50 foreign PhD students in the center focusing on NGN, with almost half of them working on IPv6. And we have about 10 to 20 more master students who are also active in that area. These are the areas of which we do research in: next generation internet and IPv6. We do work in unified communications. We do work in internet security. And when I say internet security, it's a very large area. Our focus is on botnets. We do work on mobile wireless satellite technologies. We do work on internet governance. And we do work on alternative energy sources as well. Our global recognition comes from numerous bodies. We are consultants to ITU in the field of IPv6. We are closely, we work closely with Impact. We are the research center for Impact in terms of botnet research. We also work with ITU on that. Here now I come back to the word IPv6, whether it's a migration or an expansion. Now, if I go to somebody and a normal administrator, and if I told him, look, I'm going to migrate your network, the first thing you're going to get is a feeling of insecurity coming from the person. A lot of system administrators today are already burdened with a lot of work. Their request for additional staffing is often turned down, but their load keeps increasing. Because anything else that you say, okay, well, yeah, we'll look at it later. We'll think about it. Right? But really, it's not a migration. So migration brings about the word that you're going from one, you're changing to the next. In terms of IPv6 today, what most of us are doing is we are dual stacking. So really what you're doing is you're expanding your network to accept IPv6. Now if you go back to that same system administrator and tell him, hey, look, can I expand your network and add an additional protocol on it? He'll think and say, yeah, why not? You know, that's expanding my network. So you're not disturbing my existing network. You're not creating chaos. You're not trying something experimental or new. You are just adding a new protocol, like adding a new service on it. So he feels a lot more comfortable, right? So, and this is actually what we're doing. We're not taking away IPv4. We're not disturbing your IPv4, and I tell this to a lot of people, we're not even disturbing your IPv4 security side. Security is a big thing with everyone today, right? So tell him, given that level of comfort, your v4 stays, but I want to put v6 onto your network as well, right? So basically, in an easier way to say it, you can speak Hindi. What I'm trying to do is teach you French as well. Right? So that's really what we are doing. We are adding on a layer. We're not taking away your v4 capabilities. So that adds a great level of comfort into system administrators and the people that you're going to be working with to push the IPv6 agenda. Now I get into the banking industry. Why is IPv6 so important to the banking industry? So this talk was key to the IDA of Singapore. They invited me and they said, Suresh, we are having a lot of difficulty convincing the banking industry to migrate. They're asking us, why should we do this? Now, most of you know Singapore is moving towards the service industry. And banking has become a very important sector for them. Right? So the government was very worried that the banking sector wasn't moving. How do you convince the banking sector? So my answer was simple. Now, a lot of the banking in Singapore is not done by Singaporeans. Most of the banking in Singapore is done by foreigners, right? People who have offshore accounts in Singapore. Now, a lot of those people do their banking via the internet. A good number of the bank accounts or the users of Singapore are from China, India, Indonesia. 3 of the largest populations in the world. Right? So China first, India number 2, US is 3rd, Indonesia is 4th. So out of the 4, the 3 largest populations in the world are using Singapore for banking. Now, out of these 3 largest populations, all are short on IP addresses. Right? And if you take a look at the ISPs in all these 3 countries, they are all now only getting IPv6 addresses. And we can't blame APNIC for that. They've run out of addresses. So when you go to them and ask them, they can only give you IPv6 addresses. Right? So if you're a new ISP, you're starting a new ISP in India, you'll only get IPv6 addresses, right, from India's NIR as well. Your uplink ISP may give you a few IPv4 addresses, but really nothing much to play with. So you're really going to be moving towards IPv6 services. Now, when this guy sitting somewhere in a little village in Indonesia decides to do his $150 million transaction of selling timber, and he wants to put that money into his bank in Singapore, and he has only an IPv6 connection, and when he clicks and he can't get into his bank account, that's a problem. That's going to be a problem. So that connection, no matter where it fails, whether it fails at the last mile in Singapore, or at the ISP level, or the mid-range connectivity in Singapore, it's still a failure. And when he can't connect 2-3 times, he'll say, well, you know what, I'm going to take my banking somewhere else. And he'll say, you know what, if I can take it to Malaysia, if I can take it to Thailand, why not? If they are all connected, IPv6, I can see it, I'm going to take my banking somewhere else. Now, can Singapore afford that? Right. I'm using Singapore as an example here because this presentation was actually done for them earlier. And since they are very key in the banking industry. This affects throughout. This is a global thing. A lot of people come to me and say, look, do I really need to move to IPv6? My answer is simple. Well, who are your customer base? If you have a website and you're selling X product and your X product is only limited to Y customers, all of who have IPv4, then don't worry about it. And you have no expansion plans, you have no need to expand your product base, you're very happy with what you're doing, done deal, don't go to V6. But if you're a company that is progressive, you're looking at adding new customers, you're a website that says the globe is your marketplace, then if you don't add V6, you're going to lose all those people who are going to come into the internet with only IPv6 addresses. Can you afford to do that today as an organization? So that is what you need to think about. And you know, moving a web-facing server from IPv4 to IPv4/IPv6 is not difficult. It's really not difficult. Take you a couple of days to do it. Right? So you need to weigh that. Can I sacrifice those customers, those new guys? Oh, I can't do that. I can't afford to lose that additional 10-20% growth. I can't, the new customers, new ISP users in India important to me? Are the new users in China important? The new users in Indonesia important? The new users in Russia and the Russian Federation's important? If they are not, then yeah, sure. But if they are important to you, think very carefully. Is that investment to move to IPv6, is it worth it or not worth it? Okay. With that, I'm going to skip the rest of my slides. I think I've made my point pretty clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Suresh. I think you have clarified number of issues in this forum. And of course, sometimes we wrongly used the word migration, but definitely we always mean expansion, which you really want to mention it. So definitely, I think it's more appropriate to use the word expansion. I am looking at Mr. Charia. Time and again,
I am suggesting for the coexistence.
Yeah, time and again is also touched this issue in different forums. So definitely transition, adoption, this expansion. But basically now people of India is aware of what is to be done. In addition to Hindi, we have to learn English also. It has to coexist. It is not like that migration. So basically, but I am really thankful to you for making this point further clarified in this forum. And of course, I would like to tell you in this forum, mainly government sector, and you can see the dresses, uniforms, persons in uniform, the defense, around 8 to 12 officers from the defense forces are there. And of course, other departments from the Ministry of Home Affairs, from Ministry of Power, and of course, water resources. But I cannot name each and every department. Almost 20 departments from the central government and state governments are present in this forum. So definitely it is the example given by you, banking industry example. But definitely in each and every departments, migration, transition, adoption, expansion has to be there, so that to maintain the business. So definitely we are in that direction. By the way, we are holding one more meeting with the banking industry on 8th of October, where all the public sectors, banks, insurance companies, all have been invited to address these issues. So I don't know whether you would be able to give this presentation on 8th of October here itself. But anyway, we will take your slides and would like to share your views with them. So, but I am really thankful of Mr. Suresh Ramdas, who has nice enough to accept our invitation on a brief notice, and he was always available to us. And of course, he has not touched the point which I wanted him to touch, regarding this certified networks engineers training. Okay, in India, we need to have around more than 5 lakhs person trained, IPv6 trained at level 1, level 2, level 3 in different time frames in around 5 years time. And of course, he is running an institute which is the world famous certified programs. So definitely India would like to collaborate with that institute. So, and of course we are in touch with them on this issue. So thank you very much again. Now I would invite the Reliance Industries, Mr. B. Nagaraj. So that is the first time this Reliance Industries on our panel, and I am thankful to Mr. Nagaraj, who by the way happens to be my batchmate also. I am from the Indian Telecom Services 86 batch, and he is my batchmate also, joined, left the department around 15 years back, and now with the senior vice president in the Reliance Industries. In charge of the planning and engineering and operations of value wide area networks, and he has been responsible for building an enterprise multi-protocol level switching, and of course he has been also responsible for setting up a lab for doing extensive testing and adoption for enterprise centric IP centrics, that is VoIP, IPTV deployments, and content delivery for family entertainment, wireless technologies. So we are having a number of value additions in his name, but of course because time is short, so I won't like to share all these merits, but so I would invite Mr. Nagaraj to deliver his talk. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon, respected panelists, my dear friends, and moderator. I thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to present the views of whatever the IPv6 and what is going to bring. As you know that Reliance Industries, as a part of the earlier deployment, we have actually gone through a particular phase where we saw a mobile revolution, and to an extent it played a part. And the same way now Reliance Industries would like to play a part in the Internet of Things and the growth of the Internet in the country. But still, that it's in the evolution and a lot of inception stage, and a lot of flux is there. Of course, it so happened that after I left DOT, in one of the other parts I was associated in both the revolutions. So I may actually express some of the ideas. It may not really represent at this stage the true views of my company, but still, as a professional and being in the planning and the designing part of it, I would like to share some of the views and thoughts. As a new generation service provider, what we actually talked about many things like the participation of many many industries, many components, and here what a service provider, a new generation service provider, can play a role. That's the basic this one. We all actually have been hearing about IPv4 exhaustion, and therefore IPv6 is what is actually is required. I would actually really call the IP addresses as a whole as a dial tone equivalent of the voice network. In the data network, it's like equivalent of a dial tone. It's the management of the IP addresses, management of this resource is very, very critical, because now in the new generation, it's not just like we log in and we actually use some of the services. It's just like we are always on, always available. I'll actually just touch upon these points. And this provides a lot of opportunities for the new services which can be rolled out. We actually heard about the banking industry. We heard about many, this one, say for example, smart cities. Agarwal mentioned that at least 2 cities in each of the state will be a smart city. Why we need a smart city? Why actually this is required? I'll touch upon as we go along. I would actually go even beyond that particular thing. A smart building is another requirement. I stay in a complex which is huge, about some 10 acres of land. And actually I have seen what are the security problems, what are the issues which comes, and nearly about 500 families staying over there. What are the different say issues which actually will arise, and how it can be actually made to make our own experience, our own quality of life actually much better. A smart home, within our home, how exactly we can actually make our life much more efficient. And it actually leads into the machine-to-machine communication, the Internet of Things, the offshoot. And what is the role of service provider in the entire thing? And what is the converged network? And I would like to conclude based upon these remarks. I'm sorry for the overlapping of the slides, but the broadband penetration is one of the things which is actually important. And as we have been hearing, that in 2016 there is a target actually which has been actually kept at 200 million actually which has been reached. But then it will go up to about 600 million, which actually is going to be there. There will be growth of the smartphones in the mobile sectors as well as the devices. And if you actually see, in about 2009 to 2010 itself, the ratio of 1:1, the devices versus the person, we have already crossed. And as we go along, every person, every living being will start actually requiring more than about 6 to 7, let's say, the requirements, the devices requirement. So when we actually take this particular thing, so any connection, any place, any connections, and any time, this is what the requirement actually which will come out. And if you see the other problem, the urbanization is the other thing which actually goes on. We actually become, the cities becomes more and more dense, and we have got more and more civic and other problems which will actually come associated with that. we need the broadband connection, so we actually need a lot of facilities for that, and facilities has to be coordinated. So the management of this entire thing itself is actually becomes another any connection oriented connection capability becomes very, very important. In the smart city, when you see, the energy management, the water management, the emergency response and public safety, the traffic management and transportation, these are some of the things which actually are required. The security which is actually required for the smart city. All these things will actually lead to a better management of the city, the smart city itself. And the easy governance which actually comes with this. And this will actually, if you divide this particular thing, it will come in applications, trends and service. And starting from the shopping, entertainment, public administration, private and public health, and road and transport, and that's one stage. The trends actually, which is actually like the interactive media, the independent life in aging, lifelong learning, all these things coming the second as a trend. And the third is the service area, where the local guide, the tagged environment, intelligent building, remote medical treatment, traffic management, these are other the service areas. See, all these three will actually drive the requirement of the smart city. The smart grid, starting from the generation, the transportation of the power, and then consumption. Actually, we actually hear, that many locations even in Mumbai itself, there could be actually that one is the geo's utilization. That means the power is not properly utilized, and whatever is utilized is not properly metered. So these actually smart grid will help to really improve the situation. Lastly, social networking. Every one of us would like to get interconnected at every time. So the any to any place and any time and any person, so the connectivity becomes very, very important. In the smart building itself, for example, there could be sensors, there could be meters, elevators, fire hazard, HVAC, lighting, security. So many of these actually interconnections become necessity so that the proper management of these buildings can actually occur. The smart home itself, there can be appliances, smart meters, home automation systems, the temperature control, then electrical heaters, and whatever the array which actually has been deployed for say the solar heaters and such those things, they can be all connected, and then through a gateway they can be connected to the say either through the internet or to the broadband to the application servers. Ultimately, it comes to a machine to machine. Any machine to any machine it can be connected, and then we can actually come into various instances where the different devices are speaking with their respective servers, and the health and the proper monitoring actually can be actually given. As you go along, even the connected cars, whatever the exact communication which can be actually done in the connected cars. Now, having said that, these are some of the services which a connected environment actually can give. So, what a role of service provider which can be given? One is within the home or a building or any location which is required. So, there having a gateway which can actually give the connectivity over to the different places, connected on different mechanisms, either on a wire or a Wi-Fi, and then backhauling through the LTE or through the FTTX environment in a secured IP networks back to the management platforms, back to the applications, and back to the internet locations. And that is actually where this actually can be the role of service providers will give, like coverage, modularity, the cost of connectivity, the total cost of ownership, low latency, high data rates, network capacity, the life cycle, integrated GPS and location tracking, security, IP-based architecture. Of course, all these things actually are all based on the IP. Now, the converged networks are not only giving connectivity anywhere to any time, still that the device should be actually tracked whether irrespective of the access mechanism. It could be a public Wi-Fi, it could be a wireline, it could be a 4G environment. So whichever the case is there, still the user should be able to get the ubiquitous services. And that's where the converged network this will come. Having said that, that it's not the IP environment which actually being there. We have to live with IPv4. Why? Because one of the studies which actually gives is the content which is available, even though in a managed network a service provider can actually have as many applications as possible at IPv6. Still the content, they will actually be dominated by IPv4 because we have come from that particular arena. Now that in the new generation environment, whatever we talked about, the devices and all, they can be IPv6 enabled. They can be IPv6 aware. But as we go along, this IPv6 has to be connected to IPv4 network. It brings in lots of challenges and issues. Like we may have to do a NAT for our use of private addresses. They are not even though there's some mechanism, but the amount of expansion and amount of connectivity which is required, it will not be able to meet the requirement. So we'll have to come up with some mechanisms and architectures or methodologies where this IPv4 can be still taken on the IPv6, taken as IPv6 back in the network. The applications awareness actually, where if it's V4, it should be given as a V4, and as a V6, it should be actually going as a V6. That is, more and more the expansion or more and more new services, they will actually originate on the IPv6, whereas still we have to actually make the IPv4 interoperability possible. So with this conclusion, actually I say that there is a great opportunity for the IPv6 to be deployed in the country, and the way in which the devices actually availability, devices working will be possible on IPv6 will make this particular the IPv6 to work in much more efficient way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Nagaraj. So basically, what we were expecting to hear from Mr. Nagaraj, he has exactly conveyed the same message, but only thing he has not declared, which may be the secret of the Reliance Industries, which we anticipate so. So basically now other service providers, ISPs, should definitely take a cue from this presentation, and it may be a business case for each and everybody. And in addition to it, Government of India has already declared to set up 2 smart cities in each and every state. So this may be the starting point. So in various meetings, people used to ask us, sir, where is the business case? So it's not a business case, it's going to be a very, very big business case. So now we have presentations from 3 panelists. Now among with us 4 more panelists are there, and the first most is Mr. Ram Mohan, who is on my right side. So we will now deliberate on different issues, and once we will deliberate on different issues, so before just inviting to deliberate on different issues, I'll just introduce the different panelists available with me on the dais. So on the right side of me, Mr. Ram Mohan, and he's the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of FICCI Limited. Ram oversees key strategic management and technology choices for the company in support of the company's various lines of business. And of course, he serves on the board of directors on the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, the highest body for the Internet. And of course, he is the founding member of the Security and Stability Advisory Committee, SSAC. So definitely it is very important for our country, and of course we would like to take your services on that count also. So he has led both the GNSO International Domain Name Working Group and the ICANN Board IDN Working Groups. So it is all about Mr. Ram Mohan, and definitely before coming to the issues, I would like to introduce brief introduction of the other panelists also. And of course, Mr. on the my just left side, Mr. Anup Pandey, he is the Chief Strategy Officer with the new 6 Matrix Global Services, a new startup focused on IPv6 services and solutions. He is an IPv6 evangelist. You can just understand that because of our these implementations and focused workshops new startup company we have starting the work in India. And of course, Mr. Gopinath, Professor K. Gopinath is a professor in IIC Bangalore. And of course, he's also a vice president of the Free Software Movement of India. That is a good thing with him. And of course, as far as, okay. And the other panelists are Mr. Badri Narayanan. He is the Vice President, Global IP Engineering Network and Service Engineering in Tata Communications. He heads the global MPLS engineering functions at Tata Communications. And finally, Mr. Durga Prasad Elad, he is the Principal Architect and Project Director with Tech Mahindra. Tech Mahindra is one of the most leading and active working group with our IPv6 task force. So now, just for more clarity on the IPv6 implementations, various advantages of the IPv6 and what more it can bring to the country, to the human being, and how it can proliferate the broadband services in the country. So I have just put some leading questions to one of the panelists. So I would expect panelists to reply on this question, and if comment is there from panelists as well as from the audience. Now basically, firstly we will have comments from the panelists, then comment can be there from the audience side. So now its session is open for the comments. So my first question is to Mr. Badri Narayanan from the Tata Communications. Mr. Badri, how you think IPv6 contribute towards proliferation of the broadband services in the country, especially in the rural areas? Mr. Badri, over to you, please.
So good afternoon. So yesterday, I saw a very interesting news item. Facebook has reached 1 billion users. And I just got reminded, India is the second or third largest active Facebook community. You got a lot of moving parts. When in these kind of industry, discussions and panels, a lot of abstract and also non-abstract things get discussed. So what I'm going to share is some interesting trends, which I'm seeing in the last couple of months, not even last 1 year. You got the cloud, which is going to become a big rage in the industry. Everybody wants to put their applications on the cloud. Then you got Facebook, the social networking. Everybody wants to be on the, the social, movement. And then you got mobility. To answer Mr. Aram's question, the market reach and the market share of tablets and smartphones is now becoming as much as televisions. So, in every rural dwelling, I'm sure you will find a television today. So very soon you're also going to find a smartphone or a tablet in the rural side. So now in the last couple of months, I think all the operators are feeling the pinch. So IPv4 has got exhausted. Everybody is aware of that. But nobody has really felt the pinch. But now in the last couple of months, because of the rapid surge in smartphone traffic, operators are now doing carrier grade NAT. And they're again doing 4.4, which is again, coming back to the same point, do static NAT or dynamic NAT, which is really not solving the problem for the industry. So now there is a movement in the mobile community. If we continue to do this NAT 4.4, it is going to have a heavy toll on the business, not on the community, because the end user will still get to, access the content. But the cost of IPv4 NAT is really going to be very high. So in my view, I think I'm seeing some early tremors. When I say tremors, not 8 on the Richter scale, 9 on the Richter scale, maybe 2 or 3. But nonetheless, make no mistake, we are seeing tremors. And these tremors, I believe, will be a catalyst for more and more mobile operators to look at NAT 6.4. NAT 6.4 has got few ailments. Some applications don't work well. But I think very soon vendors will fix that. So I think in the next couple of months, we are going to see some a very, very significant shift in the way operators are going to transition from NAT 4.4 to NAT 6.4. the content is really not the issue. Till last year I was under the illusion that it's the chicken and egg story. In all the forums I keep hearing the content is not there. But the top 100 sites worldwide are on V6. And 80% of the traffic in the internet is around this 100 sites. So it's a 80-20 problem, right? The content is on V6. Now on the broadband access, if the end users have V6 enabled smartphones and tablets, all the legacy DSL and all these old CPE boxes, which used to be a big challenge for all the service providers, I think it will go away. So my answer to RM is, in the next few months, we are really seeing a lot of movements in the industry, and especially in India, with 800 million subscribers, less than 5% have got smartphones. But now the way smartphones are ripping through the industry, everybody is going to have a smartphone very soon. So if we don't do this V6 transition right now, it is going to cost a lot of money for the service providers. Thank you.
I'm very thankful to Mr. Badri for bringing the clarity in this forum. Basically, a number of issues were being dealt with us while having so many meetings with the service providers. So one of the major issues was the contents. So definitely it's 80-20, and in my opinion, it's not 80-20, it's a 90-10. With our efforts, with the efforts of the IPv4 World Day, IPv6 World Day, and so many things are going on. So now it's a 90-10, and in the remaining time, this may be the 95-5. This problem is going to be over very soon, number one. And number two, very rightly pointed out, this double 4-4, this CGN is not going to be a solution. It's going to be a very, very smart time gap. Transition methodology may be there, but very few months only. So we should not go for such a technology, which again will be a complex problem for us in future. For the last 25 years, we are just postponing this transition. So we should not further postpone it and just deploy this CGN type of solutions in the network. Rather, we should have a small trimmer, as suggested by Mr. Badri, 2 to 3 scale, and go in for IPv6 transition in a big way, so that we could have a planned network, we could have a continued business strategy, we could have a continued advantages of applications in the country. So, any more comment on this item? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Just one comment briefly I'd like to make. I think one of the reasons why going for the native IPv6 is important is the use of internet has changed over the course of the last few years. Facebook is one example how the people now start using it for the social networking. As you may recall, internet has actually started, commercial internet started with information sharing. People are logging on and then look at the information. That was the way how the use of internet started. And since then, the use of internet got actually changed to the transaction based. The people start buying stuff on the online and so on. That's its transaction. But nowadays, it's interactive centric. So the people really wanted to actually have an interactive real-time communication, social networking or video and so on. So it is critical to have a native end-to-end, peer-to-peer type of communication infrastructure. That's actually there even for the rural areas and so on, where the power of internet will actually going to change the way how people live. I believe that they're not going for the CGN or not. Is the right way to go. Rather, it's better to go for native IPv6 solution from that perspective as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinoshita, for bringing again a clarity for the CGM angle. Any other further view from the audience side? Basically, now we have started the session. It's an interactive session. Yeah.
There's one comment.
Yeah, please.
Hi. One of the concerns with IPv6 is about the privacy. Especially since now you would not have.
No, actually, I would like to intervene in this. Basically, now I would just opening this session only for specific questions. Basically, the questions which we are putting forward with the panelists, in case if any further queries there on the by the audience.
Fine.
And of course, further any other queries there, definitely we will discuss later on. But right now,
no problem.
So containing to this question, how this IPv6 can proliferate broadband in the rural area? In case if any queries there. Okay, now coming to the
Sir Agarwal, Mr. Agarwal.
Agarwal ji. Yes, somebody is there. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Agarwal ji. Regarding the rural penetration of the broadband and especially the IPv6, till the time the banking is not going to come onto the IPv6, I don't think we can increase the penetration of IPv6 into even the urban, not even the rural. I'm talking of the urban also. The moment this banking sector is into the IPv6, you will find that each and every guy is on IPv6.
We fully understand this issue, Mr. Charia, and that's why we have taken up this issue with the Ministry of Finance, Department of Financial Services, and Department of Financial Services is further asked all their banking sectors to start this payment gateway banking sites by December 2012. Okay, that may not be the achievable date, but definitely in 1 year time you will find a lot of achievement in this IPv6 compliance by the banks also. So, and of course, as I told you, we are already holding one meeting of the banking systems on 8th of October in Sanchar Bhavan itself. So those issues have been taken care of. Thank you.
Sir, Mr. Agarwal, can I make a comment here, sir? Yeah, I just want to mention one live case here because we are talking about how it helps the rural population, particularly for a country like India, where majority of the population lives in the rural areas. We've been talking about technology and all that. I just come across hardly 10 days ago a scenario where I just happened to be talking in one of these forums like that, and which was picked up as a discussion, but later it is going to be implemented now. So I really see this as an example where the impact comes. In most of these rural areas, one of the major earning potential for these people is the supplying the milk they generate or collect from their livestock there in the villages and supplying to a dairy farm or to a cooperative sort of a dairy. And there is some small setup or a booth or an office where this milk is collected from this milkman who brings about 5 liters, 10 liters, 20 liters, not more than that. And then they measure this fat content in this milk, and they'll record it in a book or something, and then they send this milk to the dairy farm, and then they send a report on what is the milk fat content now. Back in the dairy farm, they calculate the fat content and what to be paid, and they send back, and this money is disbursed. So for a person, a milkman who gives about 5 liters, 10 liters of milk for a supply, and to this whole process, it takes about 24 hours or 48 hours to get those a few tens of dollars or maybe 400 rupees as an income for a day that he has to survive on with a family in a rural area. This is a problem, but this has been there going on, and on top of it there are various other issues like maybe because of the tendency not to believe, or maybe because of the way the rural folk feel that technology cheats them and they are not the ones really not given a right return, because someone who understands technology can manipulate it or something. So these issues are there. And they could not solve the problem because there is only one way, that there is a small computer there, or sometimes it's not there at all, and there is a manual book that is registered and sent across. There is a computer somewhere, and then they do that. So this problem, when it has come up and addressed, we have been discussing, and I suggested to them, why not we have these lactometers, or which measure the quality of the milk and fat content, IP enabled, and then have the information passed on directly over a network, because we have the spread of the internet across the villages in the country today. The broadband and the service providers are the ones which are the pioneers in this country to take it across to the villages, and then have this whole transaction completed in a matter of maybe an hour or so. So he can collect his money there, and he can have an assurance that someone back there is recording it and doing it, not the local individual collector of the milk there who might have a vested interest in not giving the proper return to him. So this is what just started off with, and someone who has been a part of this discussion has worked on that lactometer to IPv6 enabled. This has been tested out in one of the cooperatives in a southern state in India. So that's where actually the returns of the IPv6 comes. Someone might ask it, Why not it can be done on IPv4? Why could I wait for IPv6? What is so special about it? But the point is it would have been done on IPv4. But in a country like India, it would have covered only just few cooperative societies. Maybe a state of Gujarat, which is just flooding with milk, and it would have covered that. And other states would have been only taking that as an example, but have not been implemented because you don't have the IPv4 addresses available to them. That's where the IPv6 comes, and that's where the impact, the social impact of IPv6 in the rural areas of countries like India would come. This is what I wanted to share with you. Maybe innovation is the way, partnership is the way to find an answer. How do we make use of IPv6? As our distinguished guest from Japan mentioned about it, partnership and innovation. That makes the IPv6 work here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Durga, for bringing this clarity and some more rural-based applications. Now, I would like to ask to Mr. Okay. Yeah.
Sir, my name is Tuesh Mishra. I am a student of journalism. Sir, considering the discussions that have already happened today, it is assumable that IPv6 is the future for our country and for the whole of the internet. Sir, if we consider the current broadband framework that is being laid down, can we expect the government to sort of educate all the places where this IPv6 framework will be established, and the individuals who will be responsible for managing them to be trained in IPv6 automatically, rather than to first teach them IPv4 and then upgrade them to IPv6, because that is going to be a more resource exhaustive process. So would it be better to start off with IPv6 in those places rather than to go down to IPv4 and then move up to IPv6?
I think you have brought down a very, very valid point, and of course we are aware of this issue. We are going to release this roadmap version 2 very shortly. Roadmap version was released in 2010. Version 2 is going to be released in the next 3 to 4 months time. And of course new service providers, definitely they would be coming with the IPv6 type of solutions only. Reliance may just want to make some comment on it, but definitely as far as awareness, IPv6 implementations and new services on V6 are concerned, definitely we are already aware of this issue. As I told you, we require more than 5 lakhs persons to be trained in this especially specialized futuristic technology. So as you understand, government has taken a lead, and we are trying to involve all stakeholders in this mission. Slowly and slowly, effects are being. Would like to say something?
Yeah. Sir, what the person is asking a question. What I will suggest, rather than the training is a very good thing. I am not denying that. But if into the university and into the colleges, if the curriculum is being changed to the IPv6, automatically the new generation who is coming into the professional life will be getting upgraded to the IPv6. Through the Ministry of HRD, we can do this very fast, because the minister of both the department are the common.
Mr. Charia, you will appreciate it. Last time also we tried to do it. In the last task force, one special working group was there, knowledge resources working group, which was specially made for inculcating IPv6 in the curriculum of the technical institutions, universities, but somehow that could not be done. But definitely, issue is very well seized, and of course we will take care this time. Thank you. So your point is very, very valid. And of course now the next the point of discussion, the next question. Of course, India is we understand at par with the world, but definitely what steps are being taken by the government in other geographies? Of course, we have learned something from Japan and of course Malaysia, but with me, the person from the apex body is sitting, Mr. Ram Mohan, so I would like to hear some comments from him.
Thank you, Agarwalji. So there are a couple of pieces of information and statistics that might be valuable and relevant. As you know, ICANN is responsible for the coordination and the work on security and stability of the Internet's domain name system and the naming system. One of the areas that ICANN tracks very carefully is the number of top-level domains and what is happening at the top-level domain. So a top-level domain, for example, .in is a top-level domain, .com is a top-level domain, .org is a top-level domain. So out of 316 top-level domains that are there in the world today, about 271 or around 86% of these names actually have IPv6 name servers on them. So that's a very good adoption rate at this point. And also of the 316 top-level domains, about 265 or about 83% of these top-level domains have IPv6 glue, in the actual zones. Approximately 4 million domain names, websites and domain names actually have Quad A records in terms of what is accessible. And you should, when I'm talking about top-level domains, most of these top-level domains are actually top-level domains for countries, and governments have a direct sovereign interest in them. The governments are the ones that are promoting them and are saying that IPv6 is an important priority. The other piece of data that might be useful in answering your question, sir, is what is happening at the root of the domain name system itself. The IPv6 glue for top-level domains was added in July 2004, and glue for the root was added in January of 2008. In terms of countries and governments and what some of the major regions are doing, in the USA, September 30th, 2012 was the deadline. The US government had passed a mandate that all government sites, all government domain names must have IPv6, must be IPv6 enabled, and must be accessible via IPv6 networks. That was a mandate. The deadline was September 30th. And the reports are that over 2,000 actual government websites in the US are currently fully IPv6 capable, and IPv6 support is there. In fact, in the top IPv6 sites in the world, state.gov, state.gov, which is the US Department of State, is one of the top set of top website. Of course, we know that Japan, South Korea, China, the European Commission, Canada, all of these geographies, the governments in those geographies have provided mandates as well as provided multi-million-dollar funding for the promotion and the adoption of IPv6 in all of these particular areas. In the African region, there is an IPv6 task force, and inside of that IPv6 task force, the African region, there is a national and government focus group that has been created, and that focus group actually has helped push forward the adoption of IPv6. In each of these major regions in the world, the regional IPv6 address registries are also doing a significant amount of work in the promotion, and they have direct government involvement and government interaction as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ram Mohan. I would like to add one more thing. Government of India has also mandated for all the government websites, external facing websites, to be IPv6 ready by December 2012. And of course, NIC is doing already on the job. So definitely, government of India is also progressing slowly and slowly. Any comment on this?
Of course, I was just reminded by the organizers, time is less. So definitely I'll just...
So the next question to the Tech Mahendra. Of course, he has already given some hint regarding applications. So the question is on the applications and new services. What this IPv6 can offer. Of course, so much have been conveyed by the other panelists, but definitely in just few bytes, you please convey.
Sure. Yep. I would, at the cost of being repetitive in every forum, I would only say it is not the question, it is the answer. That's what I would say about IPv6. The reason being that we are talking about address space exhaustion, security, etc. and all. But it has just opened up an opportunity for the telecom service providers, the technology infrastructure companies, the media companies, the content companies, or the entertainment space, and finally the society itself. What I would call it a TIMES, times. The times have come for IPv6. The reason is we are not technology dependent today. We are actually doing a social engineering with technology here. That's what is where the IPv6 comes into picture. In the interest of time, I would not get into much of detail, but to give a couple of examples where we are also working with few of the technology companies and government, quasi-government agencies. One area I would say, particularly in a country like India, where power losses are a lot more in distribution, where the power pilferage is a lot, and 40% of the actual power generated is lost in either losses or pilferation. So smart grids on IPv6. Smart grids, of course, are there where alternative sources of power can be distributed, load balanced, and do not see the grids failing and crashing for 2 days, 3 days with the darkness around. That's, of course, we have found answers through them through smart grids. But wrap around the smart grids with an IPv6 enabled network, you have an ability to control direct to your home water heater or your electrical light, even from remotely from a smartphone. That would actually save the energy. That would also give a green environment to you. That would save energy, and a watt saved in a country like India is a major potential for growth. That's one area we would see. Another area where we are working on, we incidentally happen to be the people, I'm part of the team some 7 years back, which brought in the concept of 108 in this country, which is similar to the 911 for the guests from the other countries, 911 in India. So we are working on making it IPv6 enabled. That has been deployed in 13 states and has been saving lives across the country. But we are talking about the next version of it, an IPv6 based one, where today, while the patient is moving from a trauma or accident site into the hospital, he is still being communicated about his parameters, etc. on a mobile phone by the paramedic. What we call as a golden hour probably would have reduced in terms of shifting him to the hospital, but we have not been able to achieve controlling or monitoring and affecting or managing his vital parameters till he reached to the hospital. Through IPv6, because it gives an advantage of having various multiple large number of devices across the ambulances in a larger geographical area, we are working on actually creating a small set of operation or rather ICU or sort of a emergency medical care ward inside the ambulance itself, so that the parameters are passed on to the doctor automatically onto his screen, and he would be able to directly manage or instruct the paramedic to take care of those things till he reaches hospital, which we feel saves the lives more effectively and more number of lives can be saved. This is another example I would give it. I talked about which is one in a rural area, rural setting. There are a couple of more projects which we are working on. One is on terms of the event management with IPv6. Now, we also have social engineering, we also have entertainment as a part of the social engineering. A country that is literally sold and literally lives with the cricket or, as a sport in this country. Imagine managing the whole event on an IPv6 enabled platform, so that you have everything that is taken care. Everybody enjoys a cricket match, but imagine the situation of a law enforcement agency of controlling the traffic, and a match that is completed at 11 o'clock in the night, and a vehicle that has to reach home after the match. It will take about 2 hours, which is equivalent to a match time. That's not a good sign. But imagine using an IPv6 and manage the traffic control and traffic management in real time, and putting a big data analytics on top of it, and do it in real time, which only IPv6 can provide, nothing else can provide that. You would have a better sports and event management that can happen. So these are the 4 examples I would give it, and we can talk offline other things in the interest of time. So that's what is I want to share with you people here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Durga. Thank you. And of course, I would like to tell you, Tech Mahindra is doing a lot of good projects on IPv6 applications. So because time is less, so I would like to ask one question on the security from Mr. Professor Gopinath from IIC Bangalore. Okay, is there any impact on security which organizations should be aware of? Total impact of security as far as this IPv6 implementations are concerned. The security is a big issue as far as government departments are concerned.
Okay.
Just a brief reply, please.
Okay. I think I will mention a few things that I know of. Basically, if you are planning to deploy IPv6, you certainly need some element of a public key infrastructure, which I think is something which has to be looked into seriously. For example, if you plan to do DNSSEC, for example, you need various ways of signing. You need some kind of authorized ways of signing things, and therefore this control is quite important. And we are already seeing that some of the certificates can be compromised. I think the recent attack on Stuxnet, for example, the Stuxnet attack basically was about stealing some certificates. Okay, and so issues like revocation infrastructure, robustness of this infrastructure and attack, all these things are quite critical. And we also seen recently that some state entities have manipulated signature authorities. For example, something happened in Netherlands sometime recently. So these kind of issues are also quite critical. And I think what also I find is that sometime back we had looked at mobile IPv6, and we find that most of the protocols that were designed assume some kind of trust in the participants. That's why you could see a lot of loopholes in mobile IPv6, and they usually result in a lot of DOS attacks. And for example, even IPv6, sometime in the past, you could have things like bogus address auto-configuration prefix attacks. I'm pretty sure that deployed solutions, they probably solve some of these problems in some form. But typically there are quite a few issues with respect to finding how to mitigate DOS attacks in large-scale systems of this kind. And let me also just briefly mention that if you have this Internet of Things, there could be a lot of interesting problems there also, because you have many people can be owning many things on Internet, and there could be a lot of identities also on Internet. Now, how do you, from a security point of view, or from a privacy point of view, or from a, let us say, accountability point of view, what has to be done? For example, one can imagine that you can have many anonymous avatars. Okay? That is, for each, let us say, thing on Internet, you can have a hardware avatar for a particular person. And similarly, for identities on Internet, you can have many software avatars, you might call it. And for example, already a lot of people have multiple email accounts. The issue is that can they be treated as legal persons? If you can treat them as legal persons, then there are certain possibilities that you can explore. But you can also imagine a situation where most of these avatars, some of them are non-legal persons, so they can have probably much less privileges. So there could be a lot of interesting issues about how some information is linked from one type of thing, for example, can be given to some other person, owned by the same person. And there, in some sense, they might need to think about some firewalls between various entities you keep. And this already you can see if you're planning to submit a paper to a conference, you can be a reviewer as well as an author. Okay? How to ensure that the information doesn't flow between these two? Because I can be a reviewer as well as I can submit a paper also, right? So there is some conflict of interest that is also developing in these kind of issues. How do you model these things? How do you check the correctness with respect to the kind of properties you want the system to have? These are some of the kind of things that also need to be looked into. So I think they may not be really seriously relevant right now, but I think once the scary numbers we will talk about, that everybody will have some 1,000 things with them on the Internet, IPv6 enabled things, then I think these kind of issues can become very important. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gopinath. Mr. Ram Mohan from ICANN would like to make some comment on this point, so I would request him to please.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to also alert you to something that is happening that is historic on the Internet. I was saying earlier there are about 316 top-level domains on the Internet today, but ICANN is in the middle of overseeing a historic expansion of this top-level domain space. In fact, there are about 1,900 applications for new top-level domains that have come through, and ICANN is in the middle of an evaluation process for that. Now, one of the questions that governments and other folks have asked ICANN is, what are you doing to ensure that this new space, all these new internet spaces that are being created, what are you doing to ensure that there is enhanced security and enhanced stability of the space? So I wanted to point out that every single new top-level domain that will be approved has two core requirements. Number one, every single new top-level domain must support IPv6. That is an absolute requirement. Number two, every new top-level domain must support DNSSEC. So these are two fundamental things that immediately provide a boost and an upgrade to the core of the internet itself and to the core of the domain name system. Just briefly, from India, about 21 new top-level domain applications have come through. Out of those 21, 5 are from the financial sector. So HDFC has applied for a new top-level domain, Shriram Capital has applied, but there are, in the manufacturing sector, there are about 5 top-level domains. So if you look at the companies that are behind new top-level domain applications from India, you'll see Reliance, Infosys, State Bank of India, Airtel, Dabur, TVS, Tata, Shriram Capital, HDFC, large names, big names. Every one of them has this requirement to conform to IPv6 and DNSSEC. And I'm hoping that that will propel the increased security and increased stability of the critical infrastructure of the internet.
I think existing DNS security also needs to be emphasized. Of course, this has been being emphasized by the ICANN, but still a lot of issues are there. This needs to be done. Of course, Dr. Govind is there in this forum. Okay, I think he's just gone. Otherwise, I would. You would like to say something? Or also, board member of the NICSI
about
DNS security.
Into the DNS security.in is now Malaki not advising, now mandating to all the registrar for going with the DNSSEC.
Yeah.
When the security issue comes, sir, one my request, like lot of ISPs are using the monitoring system into their network, and CDOT is there to provide this monitoring system. Right now, the monitoring system is not upgraded to the IPv6. Either we have to pass through that monitoring system, and that will be not good for passing through that monitoring system, passing by, sorry.
I would again like to emphasize, already in 2 meetings, consecutive 2 meetings chaired by the Secretary Telecommunications, it has been conveyed to all the service providers. This has already been done. Need not to worry. We have already declared on our DOT website. You just put your traffic, no need to worry. Mr. Subhash Saxena is sitting there. He is, yes, consenting with me.
Advice to CDOT.
Now, of course, anyway, you just, from your side, you just ask all service providers to put the traffic, IPv6 traffic, and DOT will take the responsibility. We have already declared on our website.
Thank you very much.
Security, I would like to make 2 points.
Yeah, Mr. Anup would like to say something on the security issue.
Yeah. So I'm actually very glad that this question was asked, because usually the security is always left at the last stages of technology deployments. So it's very good that this question has come up at this stage. And here I want to, in view of the shortage of time, I would like to emphasize on 2 points over here. One is, see, deployment of IPv6 will bring in new vulnerabilities, in addition to whatever existing vulnerabilities are there on IPv4. So that needs to be, that will have to be addressed. Second is understand that the attackers on the internet are always 2 steps ahead of the operations people sitting in the network, managing the networks over here. So from that perspective, 2 very important aspects that I wanted to emphasize on is that one is organizations should include the security planning as a part of their transition blueprint. or the expansion blueprint, as Mr. Ramdas would like me to say. So, security planning should be a part of the transition blueprint of the organization. And second is the organization skill set needs to be upgraded to address this IPv6 security issue. So these are the two critical points which I think that organizations should do in order to move ahead on the IPv6 security aspect.
So finally, I would like to ask one of the panelists, what are the users' experience? Basically, this we are doing from the service providers angle, from the government's organization angle, but what is the user's experience in case if our subscriber switches over to the IPv6 platform? So what are the advantages offered to them by this IPv6 technology? So I would like to ask this question from Mr. Anup from the 6 Matrix.
So so IPv6, so for quite some time we have been hearing that what is the killer application, what is the IPv6 killer application, what is the business case for an IPv6. As an end user, how am I concerned on IPv6? So why would an end user be bothered on whether he is getting an IPv4 or an IPv6? So I would say that IPv6, the killer application as far as business is concerned, we always say that business continuity is the killer application for the businesses. And as far as the end user is concerned, it is the user experience that would I would term it as a killer application for the user. Till the time his experience changes, the way he uses the internet or the way his life is impacted by a technology, it will absolutely not matter to him. So the user experience is something that will play a big role in this. And here is where IPv6 as a protocol, so the IPv6 as a technology also has been designed and in an optimized way in terms of having features like auto configuration, in terms of having a simplified header, in terms of having not to fragment. So it brings in the capability of not to fragment the traffic anymore on the internet. So all these capabilities will add to the experience, it will enhance the user experience. However, apart from these technology aspects, I think what the other speakers have mentioned over the last 2 hours, it is the quality of life that would get that would get improved as an implementation of IPv6 is what the user experience will actually enhance. So that's where the enhancement of user experience will happen. The quality of life in terms of getting better healthcare services, the quality of life in terms of getting education, remote education, when I'm able to reduce travel times. So all those experiences which are going to improve the quality of life, smart cities, smart buildings. These experiences, or these are the qualities quality of life which will actually impact the users, and those enhanced user experiences is where the users will identify the importance of IPv6 and do the IPv6 go forward with the IPv6 adoption. So,
I just want to make one interesting point. The internet, the traffic is mostly peer-to-peer, and the profile of the internet is changing, right? There's an upsurge of video traffic. So, a lot of what Anup mentioned is the technical realm, but for an end user to really care, what do I care for V6? If you do a video chat with your family, friends, relatives, you want a seamless, experience, right? So when you're doing the NAT, it is going to impair the performance of the video chat. And, a lot of the shift that is happening in the internet world, one is we see the volume of traffic going up. Then you see the variety of traffic also going up. So, vendors like IBM, Oracle, a lot of the vendors are getting into the analytics space because they suddenly see a lot of changes in the way the internet, has been functioning to date. So, under the earlier question on security, now I would say IPv4 has got enough holes to actually move to V6, right? There is a lot of deterrent in V4, right? So something is better than V4, so why not move to V6? So I think if you look at some of the practical challenges, an end user who got a smartphone in his hand, He wants his application that is working today to work fine in the future. So then on top of it all comes the Internet of Things, smart cities, smart buildings, smart homes. But the basic functions, the applications, that has to work seamlessly. So that's what the end user will relate to, saying my experience is good. When I connect any application, it works fine. There are no broken connections, broken records. That I would say is really kind of, the essence of the user experience. Thank you.
Any other comment on this? Yeah. Finally, of course, I would like to one question from Mr. Srinivas. Mr. Srinivas, at least one question for you. People still say that IPv4 still has a lot of reserved space. So why not use the same? Your just simple comments for more clarity purpose.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, basically IPv4 still has a lot of reserved address pool. So why not use the same?
Okay. First of all, thanks, Chair, for inviting me to this session. I'm Sani Chendi or Srinivas Chendi from APNIC, the RIR in the Asia Pacific region. I'd like to first thank the eminent panel members here, spoke from many sectors of the industry. In fact, very glad to hear from Ramon as well on the dots, which is good to see that the dots are catching up with, or actually be the leaders in the IPv6 as well. I'd like to make from the registry perspective, from APNIC and also from the NIR of India, we did not really finish IPv4. Okay, we still have last/8 block. So it's incorrect from a registry perspective. It's incorrect to say that we actually ran out of IPv4. We didn't. We are still allocating from the last/8, but we rationed it. Why? You might ask the question why we rationed it. Because to allow the new entrants to receive IPv4. You can't expect a new business to start up and just go straight into IPv6, right? That's not right to do, right thing to do actually, when you have a lot of existing operators on IPv4. So that's where we rationed it to limit that the current members will only receive a /24 or a 22 as per their membership, whatever they have with us. And we are keeping the rest for the new entrants into the market. So we still allow the new businesses to prop up, to come into business, to start internet services, and we encourage that to do so. In India, I did a presentation in the last Sanok.
Okay. I think this is the final warning.
Yeah, I'm eating into the lunchtime, so I won't take too much time. But in India, out of our memberships that we have, only less than 50% of members are on IPv6, or they got allocation, IPv6 allocation. So there's still a lot of growth in India for the members to go and get IPv6. And it's really, really simple thing, Click a button, you receive your IPv6. Our host masters these days are not even evaluating the application, You go to your portal, you push the button, within seconds you get your IPv6 block. Register in the database, you're ready to use it. There's resort address space at the IANA level that the V4 is finished, but technically it's not finished yet. There's a lot of good netizens who received the IP blocks historically are actually returning them to IANA. And there's some policy proposals are going around to see how those can be distributed to the RARs. So some address space will come to the RARs, to the NARs, later stage. There's a lot of transfers happening. We're seeing a lot of movement in IP addresses as well these days, a lot of transfers. Again, there's a policy for that to allow the transfers to happen. That's a good thing as well. That if those who are don't need the IPv4 addresses they have in stock, they can give it to those who have. And there's the policy is very simple, transfer is very simple. The reserved address space will come back to the deployment stage, but I can't predict when it's going to happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other question by the audience, please? Okay. Otherwise, already.
Sir, I have a question. It's there, Pankaj.
Yeah, please.
I have heard a lot of words with this conference and a lot of inputs for me. So as a common citizen, I'm using a lot of e-governance services. What's there for me if I go with IPv6? Thanks.
Mr. Anup, in just a brief 2 lines, would you like to say something on it? Because already you have just shared with the users' experience. Just
yeah. So as you can see, there is already a road in the roadmap. The government is already looking to shift all the e-governance services on IPv6. So the e-governance services will be transitioned to IPv6 in over the next by 2013 is what the mandate is for the government to transition these services. So that's where I believe as a user you can access those services over IPv6.
I think now we need to close the session, otherwise this audience also going off. Okay, we will discuss this offline, and of course I will request all my audiences, please discuss the questions offline with our eminent speakers, because these speakers are very experienced and rich. So with these words now, because now our audience is also going from the session, of course we are taking away much time. So thank you very much for all these presentations. But finally, I will request all the audiences to stay for 2 minutes, please, just for 2 minutes. And of course now I will request organizers have arranged some souvenir for our this eminent speaker.